and welcome. Welcome in. Let's see, just a minute, and I'm going to go ahead and read what I have on Mr. Kilmar Garcia. Let's see. No, that's not what I'm trying to do. Okay. Oh my goodness, this is different. All right, this is a little different from what I am used to. So sorry. Okay. So, the Supreme Court rules U.S. must facilitate return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia from El Salvador. And the first part of what I'm going to read is from CNBC. And this came out just tonight, Thursday, April 10th, 2025 at 9:01 p.m. All right, so the Supreme Court upheld a lower court order that the Trump administration facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Maryland man who was forcibly deported to El Salvador. Abrego Garcia is being held in prison in El Salvador, but the Supreme Court, in its decision, told a federal district court judge in Maryland to clarify his order that the administration effectuate the return of Abrego Garcia. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and read the court order. Let me get back to it real quick. And this is the man that the Trump administration had admitted that they went ahead and deported him in error. So this is, I feel like there's several instances of like wrongful deportation with this whole El Salvador thing, but this is, I want to say, definitely the one case where they did say that they were at fault, but then they said it's nothing that they could do about it. So this has gone all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has made their final decision on it. So this says Supreme Court of the United States, number 24A949. Kristi Noem, Secretary, Department of Homeland Security, et al. Versus or v. Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia et al. On application to vacate injunction entered by the United States District Court for the District of Maryland, April 10, 2025. On March 15, 2025, the United States removed Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia from the United States to El Salvador, where he is currently detained in the Center for Terrorism Confinement, CCOT. The United States acknowledges that Abrego Garcia was subject to a withholding order forbidding his removal to El Salvador, and that the removal to El Salvador was therefore illegal. The United States represents that the removal to El Salvador was the result of an administrative error, in quotes. The United States alleges, however, that Abrego Garcia has been found to be a member of the gang MS-13, a designated foreign terrorist organization, and that his return to the United States would pose a threat to the public. Abrego Garcia responds that he is not a member of MS-13 and that he has lived safely in the United States with his family for a decade and has never been charged with a crime. On Friday, April 4th, the United States District Court for the District of Maryland entered an order directing the government to facilitate and effectuate the return of Abrego Garcia to the United States by no later than 11:59 p.m. on Monday, April 7th. That was in quotes. On the morning of April 7th, the United States filed this application to vacate the district court's order. The Chief Justice, in all caps, entered an administrative stay and subsequently referred the application to the court. Excuse me, y'all. The application is granted in part and denied in part, subject to the direction of this order. Due to the administrative stay issued by the Chief Justice, the deadline imposed by the district court has now passed. To that extent, the government's emergency application is effectively granted in part, and the deadline in the challenged order is no longer effective. The rest of the district court's order remains in effect, but requires clarification on demand. The order properly requires the government to facilitate, in quotes, Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. The intended scope of the term effectuate, in quotes, in the district court's order is, however, unclear and may exceed the district court's authority. The district court should clarify its directive with due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch in the conduct of foreign affairs. For its part, the government should be prepared to share what it can concerning the steps it has taken and the prospect of further steps. The order heretofore entered by the Chief Justice is vacated. Statement of Justice Sotomayor, with whom Justice Kagan and Justice Jackson join, respecting the court's disposition of this application. The United States government arrested Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia in Maryland and flew him to a terrorism confinement center in El Salvador, where he has been detained for 26 days and counting. To this day, the government has cited no basis in law for Abrego Garcia's warrantless arrest, his removal to El Salvador, or his confinement in a Salvadoran prison, nor could it. The government remains bound by an immigration judge's 2019 order expressly prohibiting Abrego Garcia's removal to El Salvador because he faced a clear, in quotes, clear probability of future persecution there and demonstrated that El Salvador's authorities were and would be unable or unwilling to protect him. APP period. So that's app to application to vacate injunction 13A. The government has not challenged the validity of that order. Instead of hastening to correct its egregious error, the government dismissed it as an oversight. And then, so it's DECL period of R period CERNA in number 25-CV-951 DMD March 30th, 2025. And then ECF DOC period 11-3 P period 3. The government now requests an order from this court permitting it to leave Abrego Garcia, a husband and father without a criminal record, in a Salvadoran prison for no reason recognized by the law. The only argument the government offers in support of its request that the United States courts cannot grant relief once a deportee crosses the border is plainly wrong. See Rumsfeld versus Padilla, 542 U.S. 426, 447, N 16, 2004, CF Boumediene versus Bush, 553 U.S. 723, 732, 2008. The government's argument, moreover, implies that it could deport and incarcerate any person, including U.S. citizens, without legal consequence, so as long as it does so before a court can intervene. Let's read that again. The government's argument, moreover, implies that it could deport and incarcerate any person, including U.S. citizens, without legal consequence, so long as it does so before a court can intervene. And I'm really glad that they put that in there, because that is like the whole, I mean, it's not the whole point, but it's part of the whole point, that if you can just go ahead and deport anyone without due process, you don't know who that person is. You don't know who the people are that are being deported. If people are just being whisked away, and we have to count on somebody saying, "Well, we know who they are." It's no need for you to know. We knew who they are. That could happen to anybody. So I'm really glad that they wrote this in this decision, because as terrible as it is for this to have happened to this man that had some form of legal standing here, and this was absolutely not supposed to happen to him. This could happen to anybody if a hard stand had not been taken. So, see Trump versus JGG 604 US dash, 2025, Sotomayor J period dissenting. And then it says slip op at 8. Okay. That view refutes itself. Okay, because every factor governing requests for equitable, let me make this a little larger, because every factor governing requests for equitable relief manifestly weighs against the government. And then it's someone, Nikin versus Holder, 556 U.S. 418, 426, 2009. I would have declined to intervene in this litigation. I'm sorry. I would have declined to intervene in this litigation and denied the application in full. Let's see, because every factor governing requests for equitable relief manifestly weighs against the government. Okay, so they're referring to another case in here and even above. Okay. Nevertheless, I agree with the court's order that the proper remedy is to provide Abrego Garcia with all the process to which he would have been entitled had he not been unlawfully removed to El Salvador. That means the government must comply with its obligation to provide Abrego Garcia with due process of law, in quotes, including notice and an opportunity to be heard in any future proceedings. Reno versus Flores, 507 U.S. 292, 306, 1993. It must also comply with, and this is the last page, y'all. If you've been hanging in here with me, thank you for coming in. All right, let's see. It must also comply with its obligations under the Convention Against Torture. See Convention Against Torture and other cruel and inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment. December 10th, 1984. S Treaty Doc number 100-20, 1465, UNTS 113. Federal law governing detention and removal of immigrants continues, of course, to be binding as well. See 8 USC, a character, I don't know what it's called, 1226A, requiring a warrant before a non-citizen may be arrested. Wow. Requiring a warrant before a non-citizen may be arrested and detained pending a decision on removal. My God. 8 CFR, another character, 287.8 C2II 2024, requiring same. See also 8 CFR, a character, 241.4 L. In order to revoke conditional release, the government must provide adequate notice and promptly arrange an initial informal interview to afford the alien an opportunity to respond to the reasons for the revocation stated in the notification. Moreover, it has been the government's own well-established policy to, in quotes, facilitate an alien's return to the United States if the alien's presence is necessary for continued administrative removal proceedings. In cases where a non-citizen has been removed pending immigration proceedings, see U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Directive 11061.1, facilitating the return to the United States of certain lawfully removed aliens. This character, I don't know what this character is, 2 February 24, 2012. In the proceedings on remand, the district court should continue to ensure that the government lives up to its obligations to follow the law. And that is it, and that is all. All right, so with all that being said, Donald Trump and his regime of an administration must get that man back here. And like I said, I'm really glad about that. Let me see. I'm really glad about this decision because it goes a long way to let the public know that, we are not going to just be swooped up by some men in some masks and everybody just look the other way and say, oh, well, that's what they're doing now. They can just go grab anybody and, send you off somewhere and say that you were uh, not a citizen and they just sent you away. So I'm really pleased that they did that. Okay, so looking back at this article, I just wanted to see if there was anything else. Now, one thing I don't necessarily like, um, on the first court order, they had a date of April 7th. And then once he, I guess, denied to do it and said he was going to take it all the way up to the Supreme Court or however that happened, um, this one does not have a date. It just demands that they facilitate his release, but it doesn't have a date on it. And I personally, I would just feel better if they had said a date on there. Um, let's see. I'm just going to read the last little bit of this article and then I'll go ahead and end this live. I can't tell if anybody is saying anything. I don't normally do the lives on my tablet, and so it's so different. I can't tell. I guess maybe there's nothing. I don't know. If you've said anything, I do not see I don't see any type of a chat. But let me tell you the last part of this one article that I found. Uh, let's see. It says, in quotes, the United States government has no legal authority to snatch a person who is lawfully present in the United States off the street and remove him from the country without due process, the appeals panel wrote. The government's contention otherwise and its argument that the federal courts are powerless to intervene are unconscionable. Abrego Garcia's attorney turned to literature to describe his plight, writing in a Supreme Court filing that their client sits in a foreign prison solely at the behest of the United States as the product of I don't know this word, Kafkaesque. Okay. As the product of a Kafkaesque mistake. Abrego Garcia was deported on March 15th aboard one of 3 flights that carried alleged Venezuelan gang members and Salvadoran deportees to El Salvador. Video of the flights posted on social media by Trump officials and others showed shackled men being forced off planes at night, bringing the case wide attention. Days earlier, Abrego Garcia was stopped by immigration and customs enforcement officers in Maryland while driving from his mother's house to his home in the suburbs of D.C. His 5-year-old autistic son, who is unable to speak, was with him. Abrego Garcia was detained and sent to Texas before federal authorities deported him. Jennifer Vasquez Suro, Abrego Garcia's wife, said in a statement that she is on an emotional roller coaster. I am anxiously waiting for Kilmar to be here in my arms and in our home, putting our children to bed, knowing this nightmare is almost at its end. Vasquez Sura said, I will continue fighting until my husband is home. Woo! That's sad, y'all. That is sad. Okay. All right. One last thing. Let me see. is going on? Okay. Uh-oh. All right. Okay, well, if y'all don't have any, I wanted to check on my phone to see if there was any comments or questions, although I can't really answer any questions. I can give you my opinion. I can't really answer any questions. But yeah, if you have any comments, go ahead and throw them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll start wrapping it up. Um, but when I saw that, I'm very happy about that, and I hope that that will, maybe start a chain reaction where they'll be able to um, start getting these people back here for some form of due process, because uh, to my knowledge, none of them have had a real due process. They were basically rounded up and uh, just the public was told that they were in this what is it, Tren de Aragua gang, or I don't know if M13 or whatever that is the same as Tren de Aragua, but the public was told that that was who they were, and they were getting them out of here and sending them to this prison in El Salvador. And I don't think any of them had real due process to, have some sort of court decision made where they were actually being deported. They were, rounded up and just put on a plane and sent out of here. So hopefully he will, first of all, I hope that he's made it, because it's uh not a good place at all where they are. So I hope that he's still able to come back, because they're not in U.S. custody. So it's not like they can just send a bus bring him back from where he is. He's all the way in El Salvador in a terrible prison. um but yeah, hopefully he'll get back here safely, and then hopefully they will give all these people, end up having to bring them back and give them due process, because if you stop giving one person due process, then little by little anybody can not get due process. That becomes something that we allow, and something that just becomes the norm in this crazy system that has become our reality. So, anyway, like I was saying, okay, well, thank y'all for stopping in to check out this news. And if nobody has any uh, comments, concerns, anything that you want to highlight or bring up, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you again for joining me. And I will definitely see you on the next one. Okay, bye bye, y'all.